crazy fact here, but apparently women want to play Magic too. Yes, in a game as diverse as Magic the Gathering, being male dominated is actually a surprise considering the representation that does exist in the game. But to no one's surprise, the spaces that Magic is involved in aren't the most welcoming to women and minority groups, just anyone that isn't a cisgendered male. And one thing that Wizards and Hasbro is trying to do is bring more women in. And I think there's a two-pronged issue to this. I think the focus is too much on bringing the women in and bringing the minority groups in, which at face value is actually a very good thing. But also when you pair it along with the second issue of the fact that we're not focusing on how to keep these groups in, keep them playing and keep them growing, then I think we really start to realize what the true problem is for a lot of, again, women and minority groups entering these male dominated spaces. Let's go over an article from Hasbro that came out a couple weeks ago, but a recent focus has been brought up around K-pop and Romantasy. Hasbro looking at Romantasy K-pop Magic sets to expand female players. Now, before we go too far into this, I'm gonna put myself on blast here. I just acting true neckbeard. I made a tweet unironically using the word female. I hated myself for this. When someone brought it up, I'm like, oh my God, I'm actually being dumb. The fact that I didn't just use the word women, I'm so sorry. I have to put myself on blast here. I deserve to be made fun of for this. But going back to the article itself, reporting that Magic sales 1 billion tariff charge, all that stuff. So some of the information in this article we've already talked about in a previous video. This is largely from the Hasbro earnings call. But one thing we want to focus on in this video that's being brought up as a topic of discussion is the idea of women getting into Magic, women staying in Magic, and what Hasbro is doing to kind of tackle this untapped market, if you will. So Hasbro is looking at Romantasy and K-pop IPs, among others, for its Magic the Gathering Universe Beyond sets as a way to expand the number of female players, CEO Chris Cox says in a conference call, as the company reported Magic sales and a $1 billion charge for the impact of tariffs on earnings. Don't be surprised if you see us poking into Romantasy, so romantically inclined fantasy IPs. A big kind of avenue for this would be books, book talk. If you're familiar with Court of Thorn and Roses, we're going to go over it in a second here. Don't be surprised if you see us looking into K-pop bands. Nothing is off the table. Cox said in about kind of talking about possible licenses with appeal to female customers, which currently makes up about 30% of the player base, according to Wizards of the Coast estimates. Now, all of these estimates are kind of rough. A lot of this is, to my knowledge, calculated off of new players coming in that identify as women. And so when it comes to them staying, that's a whole other topic that we really have a lot of probably loose data on. I'm not sure how they're tracking this, probably in some way through kind of the companion app and people registering for events, but that's even a hard market itself because the vast majority of players these days are playing Commander, and Commander isn't really something you register at an event for. So that's going to be something a little bit harder to understand. But let's take this through the lens of Romantasy and K-pop. Why is this an issue, and what are the good things that can come out of looking into IPs like this? So Romantasy, for many of you that aren't involved in the book talk world, think of something like a Court of Thorn and Roses. So fantasy novels that have a little bit more romantic elements, but I might be beating around the bush here. There is some, as many people call it, smut involved. There are graphic scenes in here and varying levels of spices, but right now Sarah J. Maas is the kind of front face of this. My wife currently is actually almost about finished this whole series at this point, and is excited to read more, such as Fourth Wing and stuff like that. And I think it's a really cool way to, attack fantasy in many ways. I don't think it needs to be always about dragons and swords and big words. Not every fantasy book needs to be about that male fantasy of like high politics. Of not everything needs to be Game of Thrones. Some things can be levied off into different categories of stories. Some can be revenge plots. Some can be a hero savior adventure. Things can be a little different. And I think this helps when it comes to books and the way that they are adapted into mass media. But we know that media can also in many ways be very male dominated. So you tend to see certain books only rise to the top. And so I like the fact that Romantasy has been largely more popularized this year. Again, bringing up the example of my wife, it's definitely brought her back to reading in many ways, brought me back as well. I've been pretty lazy over the past couple of years, but I'm finally getting around to starting the Way of Kings, which I'm very excited for. But when it comes to Romantasy in general, I think there is a big difference between the type of books that women and men want to read in general. There is crossover for sure. There is fantasy within the Venn diagram of those two coming over. Not all men want to read Romantasy, and not all women want to read Romantasy either, but it's a great way to bridge the gap based on what certain women are looking for. And so this, I think, illustration does it really well. Boys, let's slay the dragons. Girls are like, let's befriend it. Let's vibe with it. Dragons are super chill. And we see many examples of media where dragons can be so. And you see this in Magic the Gathering. The different sides of the coin where in certain planes, certain creatures and subtypes can be thought of as enemies, where in others they are thought of more as friends or partners or acquaintances or whatever it might be. There are different ways that we can take fantasy tropes and flip them on its head. How many villains throughout Magic the Gathering may in some places be humans, but in many ways are actually non-humans, and they're humanoid, of course. That is the fantasy element of it, having the relatability to the reader itself. But Ugin, Eldrazi, like these are largely non-human, sometimes humanoid kind of villains that exist. Right now, the big villain is likely just Tezzeret and his kind of seeking of the super void and the energy to harvest off of that when it comes to Edge of Eternities. But there are many examples of different pieces of representation, whether it be LGBTQ plus or people of different color. Like we were largely had people going to Kaladesh, and that name has been kind of changed now as well. And so a lot of people have issues with, you know, the idea of representation. And I think this is really my central topic when it comes to Romantasy and what it represents in terms of media, fantasy, and the larger world of male-dominated spaces. When it comes to people using unironically the word woke, right? You have representation in games. This has been a big topic in video games, at least. And the idea of non-traditional male leads, you know, the strong shouldered, super muscular, can overcome anything male hero. When it comes to representation in other ways, maybe a female hero, maybe what many people would for some reason consider not a traditionally good looking female hero, people will call this woke representation. And you have to remember that when the overrepresentation of something is political, by in turn, the underrepresentation of something is also then political, because there is an overrepresentation of something else, right? So if a book or a fantasy series or an IP in general has predominantly cisgendered white men involved in it, that is woke as well, because there isn't the other large majority of the world involved as well. So when you have an IP that is woke because it is female-led, strong female characters, people of color, LGBTQ, that is also in turn woke because you have a quote-unquote majority by perception, and also therefore an underrepresentation. So it's two sides of the coin, okay? Just having straight white men be involved in a story is just as woke as having women and people, you know, of minorities being represented as there. So it's not woke to go to Kaladesh. It's not woke to be aware of a name and change the name of different characters that we see in our video game IPs. It's not that bad as people kind of put it out to be. Now, there are some issues with some things, right? Like where, you know, I personally see that sometimes there are examples of race swapping that can happen. They can lead to negative connotations based on that character. Now, I don't like to bring up this example just because of the kind of turf situation when it comes to Harry Potter, but I do specifically want to bring up the fact that when it comes to, you know, race swapping someone like Severus Snape, it can be a little problematic because Severus Snape is largely brought up for the majority of the series at face value to be a villain. And so there could be some racial connotations now brought up to that now that he is of African American, or the more popular saying would just be he's black. And so a big racial connotation can be brought to that. And so there's nuance to doing this, right? There are better ways to do this. It's just we know right now in our current writing tropes and, you know, the way we write fantasy, a lot of it is male dominated. And so having Romantasy be involved, having literature and our forms of writing skew slightly towards women, or even not even slightly, just even in big ways. Magic is doing that in many ways, but they've honestly just taken steps back with the whole Nissa and Chandra thing. Like there's so many examples of how Wizards has taken steps back to appease international sponsors and people that buy the game of Magic. There are many examples of this, but there are many ways that Wizards is taking steps forward, right? Shout out to the art of Bearscape, shout out to openly trans characters in Alesha. There are many great examples of representation that exist in Magic, and we can only serve to do those things better and have a better representation for people and have a more welcoming environment for them when it comes to people coming into the game. With Commander being the front face of Magic right now, it actually serves to be one of the better vehicles to get people into the game. Now, staying in the game is a different topic, but when it comes to getting into the game, we see it with Final Fantasy, where you just have your favorite Final Fantasy characters such as Cloud or Tifa or Terra or whoever it is. You have them come in as a legendary creature. You can now have them be the helm of your deck. I can make a Sephiroth deck. I can make a Terra deck because that is my favorite character and I can build around that character. Instead of having that character be a one of copy such as Sephiroth in my Golgari sack deck in Modern. That's not a Sephiroth deck. That is just Sephiroth existing in a deck. And so in many ways, like in Romantasy, we can have underrepresented communities. We can have women come into the game with characters that they are a fan of, that not necessarily the cisgendered male may necessarily be a fan of as well. I personally have not read A Court of Thorn and Roses. I have not read a Sarah J. Maas book, and so I don't have that same relationship with some of these characters that maybe someone like my wife would. And so I think in many ways, if a commander deck or a series of cards, a secret layer were to come out with characters from those books, I think that would draw in a lot of people. That would draw in a lot of people that are in that untapped Romantasy market. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we did see secret layers for this, because again, having that point piece, that central front facing card that can be that, deck centerpiece, such as within Commander, I think this is a great way to get people into the game, because you can have them focus in on just this one card, and then they can go to explore other parts of Magic. Again, shouting out the Bearscape art that has the kind of LGBTQ connotation to it. That's a great way to then showcase, hey, yeah, we are doing this in Magic, although some cases it is just through secret layer, but we can also explore other in-universe versions that are in regular print of cards that do have representation and do have ways that, people can just build I want to build a gay deck. I want to build a LGBTQ themed deck. I want to have cards in my deck that are LGBTQ themed. I just want to have only South Asian or East Asian or whatever it is characters in my deck. These are different themes that you can have for your deck and have different levels of positive and negative connotations, but it only serves to be good in terms of accessibility. Getting people in is the central idea of Universes Beyond, and for the third or fourth time, going in on Romantasy is a good idea for this. Again, it's not woke, it's not negative, because if you have an over-representation of something, the under-representation is woke as well, which is the thing that no one wants to address when it comes to females being the lead, or what many people can it's just Twitter discussions. I don't even want to say many people. It's just people on Twitter. It's just angry people on the internet talking about how this female character is not traditionally pretty. They're not, the big tittied blonde of whatever. That's not what the average woman looks like. Okay. People need to go outside and touch grass. There are many beautiful women out there of different sizes, shapes, colors, whatever, heights. I don't know, whatever it is. Just like how there is with men as well. Okay, there are different ways that we can introduce representation into Magic that we already are, that we can continue to emphasize. Now, when it comes to the K-pop side of things, I think this really is the cash grab side of it. And it may not be necessarily the representation that we're looking for, but at the end of the day, I think it is a net positive thing. So I am not personally a K-pop fan. I have friends that are. K-pop fans. I think largely speaking, K-pop as a fandom is a net positive thing. It's just a way to belong at the end of the day, right? Fandoms and groups coming together. Magic is a fandom in many ways. You may watch Supernatural and have a fandom involved in there. You might know that even the Twilight series was kind of made off of a kind of whole ship, a online random story that was made and then further evolved. And so there are different examples of fandoms coming together to create large positive experiences, and K-pop can be that sense of belonging for many people. Their kind of loyalty towards certain bands and members of those K-pop bands. And so Korean pop music has been a big force when it comes to media. And there are negatives to it. Fandoms have negative people in them. Fandoms have bad people in them, right? Just like with Magic the Gathering, you can bring up the age-old example of the overweight, smelly male neckbeard that exists in Magic. That's just a trope. When you ask people what they think a Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic the Gathering whatever player looks like, these days, honestly, I feel like if you ask ask someone what a Pokemon player looks like, I would hope they say probably like a young adult teen kid, right? Generally, in terms of my circles, the way I've asked that question and had people perceive it, they've generally skewed the Pokemon audience to be younger. But when it comes to Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh, One Piece, whatever, it tends to be that negative stereotype. And so a lot of times stereotypes have a small percentage basis of truth. There are examples of going into an LGS and having it smell. There are examples of going into a space and just having it be bad. Shout out to 401 Games in Toronto. In a negative way, I went to their pre-release and it was an awful experience because you went down into their basement. They are one of the top stores in Toronto right now, and their space for play is so bad. There is no air circulation down there. It is hot as heck. You go up to their main floor and it's great. Beautiful space, lit well, air conditioned. You go down to their play space and it's awful. There's no air circulation whatsoever. A group of like 40, 50 people stuck in there for pre-release. There are smells, there's heat. It's not comfortable whatsoever. You may have restrictions to where you are. It's not a comfortable space. You go to face-to-face games, it's single floor, it's all the way down. Shout out to Nerdvana Games in Markham as well. Beautiful air conditioning. One of the best bathrooms in the city when it comes to an LGS. And yes, that is a genuine thing. That is a genuine thing to be proud of. So anyway, I just want to give good shout outs to places that actually do cater to their audience, to their environment, and have levels of accessibility. Face-to-face games in Nirvana notably are actually wheelchair accessible, whereas 401 Games, based on their space, unfortunately cannot be wheelchair accessible because of the staircase kind of going down into their play space. But when it comes to K-pop fandoms and the negativity around stereotypes that exist, you have examples of fans that sometimes take it too far. You have kind of parasocial relationships that exist between people and the fandoms, like this ownership idea, this sense of belonging that they take too far. They take it to be their level of personal worth that just takes it beyond what it means to be in a fandom. And so you have this term, I don't know if you're supposed to say this out loud. I feel like this is the equivalent of when people used to just say lol, LOL. They used to just say it out way back when. People found it cringe. I find people these days, I think, say it a little bit more, but dwayer, so meaning deal with at your own risk. And it's a common term used within the K-pop space to some level. Again, if it's not widely used, and this is just my minor research in K-pop leading me astray, someone please let me know in the comment section down below. But it's as it says here, it means that someone had a negative experience dealing with someone else in the community during the process of a sale, trade, or a GO. These posts can be made anything about anyone and about anything. And so this type of situation happens to the point where they now have a label for it. There is a label for having negative experiences with people. And so you see this one for one in Magic. There are negative experiences that happen in Magic with people, whether it be at an LGS, at a game of Commander, at a game of 1v1 Constructed. At all levels, you can have a bad experience with someone. Again, to the point in K-pop where it's so large and so prolific, you have a label for it. You have examples of K-pop mobs just coming after each other, spamming each other. The K-pop fandoms, the K-pop people in general are they're a rambunctious group, but they're a great group as well. The large majority of them, I believe in my personal experience, are largely good people. They're just excited and feel very passionate about what they like. And so when it comes to these K-pop fandoms, there's been a lot of positive media that's come out recently about them. One of the more recent things that I've been seeing in my comments, I actually just tweeted yesterday, and I wanted to bring this up in today's video because I saw this being brought up, and it doesn't come across my circles because I'm not a K-pop fan personally. It's not that I don't have anything against K-pop fans. It's just I don't listen to that genre of music or am in that fandom. K-pop Demon Hunters on Netflix is actually apparently really popular. And so this is a popular show that could be tapped into by Magic the Gathering. Now, whether it's a full set or it's a secret layer, I think a lot of people would be really excited for this. And I think this would only serve to further the sales that exist to kind of balloon out of control. We see with that example in the Chris Cox article and the previous video we did about a week ago, when it comes to the sale of Magic and Universes Beyond and Secret Layers, they're only rising over time. $200 million done by the Lord of the Rings set in 6 months. Final Fantasy does it in 1 day. Now, if you wanted to pull numbers like that, I'm pretty sure Romantasy and K-pop can do that pretty well. I think K-pop is the big driver for that. I think having multiple K-pop secret layers, this would blow up the K-pop site, not the K-pop site, sorry, the secret layer site. But I think that's only limiting the amount of sales that they can do. I feel like doing a full K-pop set, K-pop related set, a K-pop Demon Hunter Universes Beyond tentpole set could actually sell insanely well. The way the marketing goes, the way people will make commander decks about it, it would introduce another level of toxicity into the game of Magic the Gathering. But it's not like that doesn't already exist to a certain degree, because alongside that, I believe a vast majority of positivity would enter the space as well. So K-pop Demon Hunters, I think, is a big untapped resource to a Universes Beyond IP. I think Romantasy in many ways is a great way to tap into an already overlapping Venn diagram. Even when it comes to just women getting into Magic, it's a great way for men to get their girlfriends, their wives, their partners, their friends, their parents, their sisters, whoever it is, into the game of Magic as well. In a predominantly male space, it's nice to be able to get more women into the space, because women can also serve to provide a better aspect and more resources, more tools to the space. I think one of the more positive things that a friend of mine actually, I would consider an acquaintance, shout out to if you know who you are, but also is one who's in charge of in LGSs. I saw them tweet about this the other day, actually, is in charge of introducing different like female products into bathrooms at their LGSs, which I think is a great thing. I think even when it comes to small things like that, a bathroom in a space, how cleanliness, like the cleanliness of it, how clean it can be, how it smells walking in, is a thing that many spaces take for granted. I've talked about it face-to-face games at their old location, a situation where I went down for Tuesday Modern, and there was some, I think it was Star Wars miniature, I forgot like the I played it as well. It was like their kind of game that they're going with their ships and everything, but a Warhammer style miniature game that they were playing at the time, and someone went in and came out, and my wife goes in, girlfriend at the time, and there's pee everywhere. There's piss everywhere. And she takes a pictures of it, shows it to me, and then shows the store owner, right? And I was embarrassed, right? And at the time, I should have backed her more and said, yeah, you know what, we should call this out. But I was embarrassed. I didn't want my group, my hobby, to be seen like this. I didn't do that. You know, I didn't pee all over the place. You know, if I had to take a 1 and a 2, I'm sitting down, I'm not peeing all over the place. I'm wiping down, I'm cleaning, right? Like, I'm not leaving my spaces like that. You know how when you walk into a men's washroom and it just smells like piss, right? Like, and I think this is one of the biggest negative stereotypes about men as well. That is absolutely true. A lot of our spaces are bad. But when it comes to women being involved in their spaces, on average, and there are bad examples of this. There definitely are bad examples of this. I've had my wife tell me stories about the University of Toronto and how there are certain people that squat over toilets and create a mess as well. It exists in women's space as well. But on average, I find women are cleanlier than men. And so to have them in the space can only serve, if not to improve our game, but advocate for improvement in our spaces that men just don't care about, or don't feel like they have the push to improve. It can only serve to improve our spaces, because these male dominated spaces are largely catered for men. They don't have the kind of women, the female aspect to it. One of the things that my wife actively talks about as well, like for partners that support their boyfriend's husband, whoever, coming in to play Magic, like one thing she misses is that in the old face-to-face games Toronto location was they used to have like a little couch section where you can just chill, vibe. You know, they used to have food, you get a little snack, you sit down, you just hang out there. But now it's all these like play spaces and chairs, right? Which aren't necessarily the most comfortable thing in the world. Like, yeah, you sit down and you play, but if you just want to lounge and sit back, that's not that comforting space. They don't have a place to necessarily browse merchandise, which is a big thing. Some women do as well. You know, my wife and I, we went to a bookstore down in the Toronto Stack Market the other day, and she really enjoyed looking through not only like the bookmarks and the books, but also some of the stickers and the book bags and stuff like that involved, like some of the merchandising, right? And so that can come in the form of t-shirts and play mats and sleeves and things that go along with the decks that she might play if a Romantasy IP came out. And so these are things that these spaces can include and improve on and do better with. These are just things that my wife is kind of bringing up, and there could be other things that other women want involved in their spaces for themselves, for when they're supporting their partners or when they are just in and around this space. There are many examples of things that we can do to better our spaces, not only to be inviting for the people that are already there, but also for the people that are underserved in these communities. And also we want to keep in these communities to help continue to better our spaces. And so in many ways, I want to kind of end this off by asking the audience right now, if you're this far in the video, I'd love for you to comment down below. I want to go through and kind of like some of these as well. And I'd love to kind of highlight them as well in some way. But examples of ways that maybe you yourself as an underrepresented member of the Magic community, whether you are underrepresented by, you know, I'm just going to bring up specific examples. If not, you know, I can't bring them all up but whether it be by color or race, or if you're underrepresentation by gender identity, or just being like an LGBTQA plus member, what is a singular way that you feel like the male dominated hobby of Magic the Gathering can do? What is one thing they can do to help serve you better? Whether it be the type of space that a store can have, whether it be being wheelchair accessible, or having a couch to lounge on, or having food or something, or is it the merchandising or the type of play that they have? Do you want female only commander nights? Or women only commander night? They use the word female. It's weird. It's weird. I know the minute y'all brought it up to me, it was weird. I'm so sorry. I'm being super cringe about this, but what are some ways that us as Magic players right now can do better to serve these spaces? Because there are problems with this type of representation in terms of bringing them about through capitalism. There are ways that Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro wants to nickel and dime you out of all of this. But I think it's also important that if this is going to happen anyway, if the Universes Beyond Train is unstoppable and the infinite money glitch that they've unlocked is inevitable, what are some ways that we can just embrace it and use it as a way to be a positive force in the community? Whether it be just showering and using deodorant as men, and just not acting completely awkward, and the way we talk with kind of underrepresented communities as well as women in the space, instead of just, being awkward, we should treat them like normal people. That is obviously a step one. But what are some other ways? Again, I'd love to highlight them. I'd love to read them through. I am a cis man in the space, and my wife has a limited view of it, being my partner for over a decade at this point. And so I would love to hear everyone's kind of perspective on this. And I'm kind of excited in many ways for this to happen. I think again, it comes off the back of a profit-driven pull for this, but there are ways we can extract positivity for this, and I'm excited for how we can do so in the future for our beloved game.